full-scale IQ you came up with in your test?
The full-scale IQ that he achieved when I tested him was 77.
Did you catch that? Nicholas Godejohn's IQ is 77. She manipulated him. It's very sad, but it happened.
With the cognitive deficits that he has, it's not real hard to manipulate him, is it? It's not real hard.
Almost close to retardation.
Where would that fall in terms of...
Yeah, 77 would fall right about.
Do you see this bullshit right here? Why people are mad? Here he is with his IQ. This is the IQ of a regular person. You see the yellow one? That is called mental retardation. It is not a cuss word. It is a DSM classification. Alright? I'm not cussing anyone, if that's what you think. But that's what it is. It's only 7 points away from that. And she manipulated this person. Is it now clear to you that this is exactly what happened? Please note, these are all my opinions, and it is only for entertainment or educational purposes. This is the trial of Gypsy Rose Blanchard. We will be discussing the most interesting and important parts of this trial, and you will be surprised, because if they only have chosen a different route, things might have ended very differently for Gypsy and for Nicholas Godejohn. Because in my opinion, they did not take into consideration the disabilities of Nicholas Godejohn, which made him very susceptible for manipulation. Everything will become very clear to you on how they have addressed his disabilities, or rather lack of it, which then made him serve life in prison, which in my opinion is not fair. You will see it.
Springfield, Missouri, 658.
So here we see Gypsy Rose. Quick note before we start, I will post another video where it's only about Gypsy's testimony. They will start off this trial with the motions hearing, so let's see if we can pick up some interesting thoughts in here.
For a little background, there certainly is going to be evidence of a sexual relationship between the defendant and co-defendant, Gypsy Blanchard, and specifically, there are a series of text messages that start about 2 weeks prior to the murder and go all the way up till the defendant is standing at the door. And there's a lot of discussion mixed in with the planning of the murder. There's sexual conversations that are mixed in that are not removable from that content. It also, the nature of it goes to show the nature of the relationship also in terms of who was more controlling, who was more dominant between the defendant and Gypsy, which will be relevant in this case. In addition, there's will be testimony from the defendant's confession, specifically that he had considered raping the victim, Claudine Blanchard, but ultimately decided not to. That obviously goes to his deliberation, his reflection.
His entire game plan is to say that Nicholas Godejohn did think about his actions and therefore he is guilty. So his side of the trial, or whatever you want to call it, does not take into consideration his disabilities, because there are two psychologists. One says he has mild autism, if any, right? And then the other one says it's level 2 autism. So it is complete disgusting trial, if you ask me. Watch until the end, please.
And that he and Gypsy have sex.
Either it is redacted or there is a pause. I don't know.
After the murder. Again, going to his mindset and of events that can't be removed, and it is relevant to ultimately the dynamic between both the defendant and Gypsy Blanchard, as well as his deliberation, his mindset.
So this one over here is Nicholas Godejohn and his two attorneys.
On a couple occasions about having sex with the victim. And whether he thought about raping her, there's a couple places where she sort of keeps bringing it up. Matter of fact, when you listen to the tape and you watch the tape, you'll see this ongoing discussion about his sex life, both with Gypsy and other people, as well as the fact that he supposedly considered raping the victim.
I have read the entire book of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and what she says is that she tricked by him and she is basically completely innocent, when everything points to the fact that everything was willingly and she knew everything beforehand.
I don't see how what one considers committing, when one considers committing a crime that's not the crime charged, how that's relevant. He may have considered a lot of things. That does not prove that he killed her after deliberation. This is an interrogation on whether or not he killed her. She asked him if he considered raping her and thought about raping her. And he did after questioning the officer, make some statement along the lines that I thought about it, but I didn't do it. And then she asked him repeatedly, will we find your DNA, will we find any semen, stuff like that, and he says, no, you won't, because I didn't do that. That's not relevant. What's relevant is why he went in there, and did he kill her, or did he kill her after deliberation? That's what's relevant in this case. Plus, there's quite a bit of discussion between he and Gypsy about rape fantasies and things along that lines, which, by her own admission, were all consensual. They both kind of...
Yes, that's what she said. It was all consensual, the fantasies, rape fantasies. So this is a deliberate lie in her book, trying to push the narrative of her being the victim. But it all stems from her creating trauma in her life and then not dealing with it, and then shoving everything under the rug and pretending that none of this has ever happened, right? Because clearly she says in her book that she has been raped by him, and it was so bad, it was so evil, malicious. She even says that in an interview, but then in court she admitted everything. So wake up.
This rape fantasy, they talked extensively about rape, and it was just...
Did you hear that? They talked extensively about rape. That means there are two willing participants, otherwise you cannot have a conversation.
Fantasy. And she even had at one point made a statement that right after the murder, he raped her. And she's actually said that on national TV. She now admits that's not true, that he didn't rape her, that it was consensual sex.
I cannot agree more with him. He said that the rape after the deed, right? Gypsy always talks about that she was raped. No, that was consensual sex, because they have talked about it pre-hand, they have agreed upon it, and that's what he did. But it was a role play. You cannot inform your victim, hey, I am going to rape you, so you better be okay with that. And then the victim says, oh, okay, sure, yes, you can do that. What's up with that? It's role play. It's complete twisting of the facts. Don't listen to the trial, you will not know the truth. But it is very boring material to go through. I cannot disagree with you, because quite frankly, I don't really want to spend my entire day listening to that and then spend another day making a video about it. But that's what needs to be done, because these are the facts right here in your face. That's not rape. He said it himself. He's the lawyer.
It always was consensual sex. So my request is that evidence of pornography, which I think there is in some of the police reports, quite a bit of evidence about pornography usage, that has nothing to do with this case. And I would ask that that part be excluded from the tape. And then any evidence of the rape fantasies between the two of them, unless it's made explicitly clear that that's just a fantasy between a couple, and that's all that was. So that's the basis of my motion there.
And here's the crux of the whole thing. It has nothing to do with the characters or the whatever BDSM bullshit or the Ruby and the Victor, all that stuff. It is a fantasy. It is role play. It has nothing to do with becoming a criminal.
This case was assigned to another judge before me, and that judge is the one who entered most of these orders concerning the psychological issues, including the admissibility of the psychological testimony. As I recall, Mr. Patterson, after Mr. Perry raised the issue of diminished capacity, you filed a motion before Judge Holden to conduct an examination of Mr. Godejohn. And I believe if you had not yet received Mr. Perry's expert's information, you at least had a summary of what it was about.
What are Mr. Godejohn's disabilities? Wait for it, it will come up later on.
May it please the court.
Yes.
Wait for it, this will be interesting. Why is Gypsy justified to kill her mother?
Of Claudine Blanchard's bedroom door stood the defendant.
Yes, the defendant stood there after being manipulated by a psychopath for over 2 years. Meanwhile, having a very, very severe disability. I'm prone to manipulation and sort, but keep going.
In all black, wearing blue latex gloves.
Gloves that Gypsy provided, just like the knife.
For the defendant, he was in love with Gypsy Blanchard, Claudine's daughter. And as he stood there, the only thing that stood between him being with Gypsy was Claudine.
And who was the one who imprinted this thought into his mind over and over and over again? right? Because he did not know Dee Dee at all, ever. He only knew what Gypsy told him. That is manipulation already.
Stood there holding that knife for a minute, considering and deliberating the murder of Claudine Blanchard.
If it was not for Gypsy, he would not have done that. But on the other hand, Gypsy has already a prior attempt of killing her mother. For your information, this will not come up during the trial at all.
To murder Claudine. That wasn't the first time the defendant deliberated. It was a
Yeah, that's his game plan. That's what he's going to do. He's going to push during the entire interrogation that he has deliberated upon it. He will never ever talk about her prior attempts of killing her mother, which she clearly said herself that she has done that with the BB gun. And again, his disabilities will not come up at all because he thinks that they are not existent. You will see that later on. As I said, there are 2 psychologists which will share their findings.
a year prior when the defendant, while speaking with his girlfriend Gypsy, was first introduced to the idea of killing Claudine Blanchard.
Full-blown admitting that Gypsy was the one that planted this idea in his mind.
A year, although it was Gypsy's idea, it was the defendant's deliberation.
Get used to the word deliberation. It will come up 100 times in this trial.
Standing outside of Claudine's bedroom door with gloves on, dressed in black, holding a knife, and thinking the bitch is dead. On June 14th of 2015, neighbors and friends of Claudine and Gypsy became concerned because they saw a Facebook post.
Gypsy made herself being the mastermind behind the whole thing.
A joint account that Gypsy and Claudine shared, and the post hinted that Claudine was dead and that Gypsy had been raped. These neighbors and concerned friends, they go to the house, nobody's answering, so they end up calling the Greene County Sheriff's Office. To their surprise, Gypsy was not injured, she was not being held captive. They, for the first
See, he
time,
does not mention that they found out that she can walk, that she was manipulated by her mother, and that she has fooled the entire society, meaning living the lifestyle of lies and deceit, which makes her very prone to become a psychopath herself.
find out that Gypsy is there willingly as the defendant's girlfriend is dead. Both Gypsy and the defendant, you will hear a lot about their relationship, and it's bizarre.
He is acting like they're having some kind of bizarre relationship. None of that is the case. They were girlfriend and boyfriend who were participating in kink, in fetish, in BDSM, which has nothing to do with committing a crime and becoming a murderer, but that is what Gypsy had on her mind from day one, right? She wanted her gone. She tried it herself twice before.
In October of 2012, when they meet on Christian Dating for Free, an online site, and within just a few days of talking to each other, they decide to become committed. And they carry on for almost 3 years in almost exclusively online relationship.
None of that is weird or bizarre. It is just a relationship. Yes, some people have dark fantasies and they love vampires and whatever you want to call it. It's not like, oh, kink is so new and so like, oh my god, it's so criminal. No, it's not.
Where they communicate over Facebook, Yahoo Messenger, and Skype.
He's yapping about something that has nothing to do with the crime. Gypsy manipulated a disabled man into committing a crime. Christian dating has nothing to do with it, and that's exactly what his lawyer said. Let's leave this out of it, because it has nothing to do with the case.
Out and see some of the dynamics of this relationship and how it started to become very sexual, and they introduced fantasy role-playing.
Again, fantasy role-playing has nothing to do with manipulating a person to commit crime. You can be dressed up as a clown for whatever I care, but as long as you are the one that pulling the strings, you're the criminal. See, the whole situation would be different if Godejohn was underage, right? Because then would be like, oh my god, Gypsy, you're such a bad girl.
Into their relationship. They each developed alter egos, evil sides, and they would fantasy role-play with one another while talking about sexual things using these alter egos.
Again, I am serious. This has nothing to do with the case whatsoever. Do you know how many people are doing this at this current time and don't commit crime and don't manipulate their boyfriends to kill their mother? Does this have to do with anything?
The defendant learns that Gypsy, who he initially knew was in a wheelchair, didn't have to be in one. He learns that Gypsy is not happy at home, and he learns that Claudine is never going to let Gypsy be with him.
Please leave a comment if you're still listening up to this point, but you will see him not mentioning the fact that she has learned the lifestyle of deceit, that her mother learned how she can get away with practically anything. They got a free house. You understand that? It takes great skill to do that. Dee Dee knew how to do that, but she does not deserve to die for it.
Around that time, back in May of 2014, a year before the murder, that Gypsy first introduces the idea to the defendant about killing her mom. And that idea is what culminates in the defendant ultimately standing outside of Claudine's door with that knife. And it was after the liberation.
He's again yapping about the liberation. Well, why don't you mention the fact that Gypsy threatened him that if you don't do it, I'm not gonna be with you, called blackmail. Do you know that?
After considering alternatives. They considered alternative ways.
They considered alternative ways to be together, but who did not want that? Gypsy Rose Blanchard. And who insisted on, we are not going to do it. I don't want to kill your mother. Let's run away.
To be together. First, trying to get Claudine to like the defendant, or even trying to get Gypsy pregnant. But ultimately, after considering those alternatives, the defendant's deliberation that ended in Claudine's murder.
Let's count how many times he's going to say deliberation. That's all they have, is deliberation. That's why they must not diagnose him as being autistic and having a mental disability. That's why the psychologist did not diagnose him that way. He said it was mild or not even present at all.
He and Gypsy had come up with. He looks at her, he takes a minute, and he says, I'll admit it. I actually did stab her. I'll admit it. And he admits that he did it, not to save Gypsy, but so that they could be together. And from there, he walks.
This one is very funny. He says, he did not say it because he wanted to defend the Gypsy. No, he said it because then they will be together. Well, it points to the same thing. You gotta defend the Gypsy first before you can be together.
The detective through what happened. How Gypsy had given him money to take a Greyhound bus from Wisconsin to Springfield. That he goes and he stays at the Days Inn to get ready, and you'll see surveillance video of.
Let's look at it. Very speed up version. There they go. Bum, 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 bum. And here we have Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Please take a look at her smile. She's very happy indeed. She does not show any remorse for her action.
Hotel room to the residence at autopsy that ultimately reveals that Claudine didn't have 4. She had 17 stab wounds.
And please tell me, Mr. Officer, have you considered the fact that maybe Gypsy Rose was the one who participated in the stabbing? Would not be surprised because Nicholas said he stabbed her 4 times.
To her back, to the back of her neck, and she had deep cuts to her neck and the knife. He tells her to get to the bathroom, lock herself in there. And now we arrive where I began, where he's standing outside of her door with the knife. Except he describes what happens after. That after that minute, his final deliberation is.
Are you counting the deliberation? I think we are at 5 or 6.
Final reflection. He goes inside. She's sleeping on her stomach. He straddles her, and he begins to stab her multiple times in the back, and he cuts the back of her neck. He describes stabbing her approximately 4 times.
He described it as stabbing her 4 times. You see, what's up with the rest? Maybe it was Gypsy who has done it, but he's not considering that.
And that's ultimately where they're found. Before they get on that Greyhound bus, they take the knife and they take those blue latex gloves and they actually go to the post office, put them in an envelope, and mail them to the defendant's residence in
And who is the mastermind of all of this? I wonder.
Wisconsin, so they don't get caught on the bus with it. And that is going to tie it together is the online persona and the online world that the defendant and Gypsy lived in. Computers were seized, cell phones were seized, and you get the full picture by reading and hearing the defendant's conversations, not with police, when he didn't think people were listening.
You do understand that he is now talking about the role-playing, the victor, and the whatever they were coming up with. He's not talking about the fact that he told a friend he does not want to do it. He feels manipulated by someone, a dark figure, called Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
He searches for bondage tape, tasers, knives, tactical knives, a jungle primitive knife, a SEAL team knife.
Yes, he searches for that, but the idea came from Gypsy. She wanted it done. She ordered a hitman to do it, and he could choose how to do it. and she should be punished for the crime that she has committed.
The text messages between the defendant and Gypsy from about 2 weeks prior to the murder all the way up until he is standing out of the door. And what you're going to see and what the evidence will show is that, yes, this was Gypsy's idea, but the defendant on June 10th was ready to kill, and these texts show he was enjoying it. He was looking forward to it.
Guess who was enjoying it also? She's not that sweet, young, innocent girl that needs a hug or two. Enough of that for now. We will now listen to a lawyer of Nicholas Godejohn.
Has charged Nick with murder in the first degree. You'll hear some evidence that Nick was autistic.
Please excuse the bad audio. This is how I got it off the internet.
And perhaps he was unable to form the necessary intent to commit murder in the first degree. When everything's said and done, I ask that you find Nick not guilty of murder in the first degree. Now, Nick didn't come into this world like most of us. He was born in the spring of 1989. He was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. His tiny brain was deprived of oxygen, and his family knew that there were going to be developmental delays. Nick went to school, in elementary school. He was diagnosed with autism.
Nicholas went to school, and during that time he was diagnosed with autism. He needed a special school to go to. But very interestingly enough, the other psychologist, right, he says that he didn't have a severe type of autism. So what's up with that?
Nick was raised by his mother, a single mother at the time, who went through boyfriends back and forth. She worked several jobs to try to make ends meet.
That's only the beginning, but it is about as bad as it can get. Because he has autism, he needs to have assistance, but his mother is very neglectful. She does not assist him at all. She leaves him to his own devices, because if there is no one to look after him, he will get himself into trouble. Guess what? That's exactly what happened. He met Gypsy Rose. That's the trouble.
But she didn't give Nick the emotional support he needed. She was often absent, wasn't there on the internet. He stayed in an upstairs bedroom on Cherry Street in Big Bend, Wisconsin, and that was his outlet to the world. And while on that computer, he met Gypsy Blanchard in October 2012 on a Christian dating site. It wasn't too long before they were
Prior to meeting Nicholas Godejohn, Gypsy Rose Blanchard has 2 attempts of killing her mother and 2 attempts of runaway, and one of them is to run away into the arms of a pedophile, and then she lies about it in her book, right, giving the impression that her mother chained her to the bed because she is some kind of evil, malicious woman, when in fact she has protected her from running into the arms of a goddamn idiot, a pedophile. What do you want from your mother in the first place, right? And Nicholas Godejohn had only 1 attempt of showing clear signs of a mental disorder by masturbating in McDonald's. So, make up the balance here. It's up to you. Leave a comment. Please tell me what you think.
love. Nick loved Gypsy with all his heart. Now, Nick was autistic, had a different perception of the world. And Gypsy knew he was autistic. She accepted that. Nick knew that Gypsy was in a wheelchair, and he accepted that. In 2011, Gypsy tried to escape. She left the house, walking without her wheelchair, made a phone call.
These are statements in court. You know you cannot lie in court. So Gypsy was walking away, right? And she is now telling people that she could not walk because she was too afraid. So she cannot walk. Her mother made her use the wheelchair at all times inside the house, when it is very questionable because the entire house was a complete mess because of the hoarding. So how can you use a wheelchair? And have you seen the hallway from the living room to her room? How can you do that with a wheelchair? Just saying. Please leave a comment. You know that if you don't walk, then your muscles are becoming non-existent. Yes, they disappear. Just like it happens. When you are a freaking liar, the truth will not disappear. You know that?
A friend picked her up. Gypsy knew there was only one way she was going to be able to spend a life with Nick. There was only one way to get out from under the grasp of her mother, and that was to kill her mother. Gypsy formulated this plan, And she wavered on it for
She
a while.
made this plan even before she met Nick, and she deliberated on it over and over and over again. She had only touched the knife once and only stabbed her once, she would be in jail for the rest of her life. But because she did not touch the knife, she did not go to jail for the rest of her life. That's crooked. But then again, you will see later on in the video that there was evidence of her holding the knife because there was DNA found on it of Gypsy Rose.
She was committed to it. Later she decided, no, that's not the right thing. Nick was happy to do whatever Gypsy wanted. He was always compliant. And finally Gypsy said, it's getting worse here. This has to be done. She stole some more money from her mother, provided that to Nick to come down on a bus and stay in a hotel. She stole a knife
These
from
are
Walmart.
signs of a very disturbed individual who has learned the way of deceit, of lies, and manipulation.
So that Nick could use that as the murder weapon. And provided Nick with gloves and tape and everything he would need to go through with her plan. And Gypsy will also tell you that she never thought she would be caught, that people would just forget about her, that they would bury her mom, and the world would move on. Before she left the house, she stole approximately $5,000 from her mom that her mom kept in the house in cash. Her goal was to start a new life with that. Her and Nick would live off that money for a while, and then start a family together. You're going to hear testimony about Nick's autism. You're probably going to hear from a couple of doctors who are going to tell you Nick is autistic. He has a low IQ.
Yes, that is a very important point. He has a low IQ. I guess it was 77 or 70, but I think it was 77. Do you know how low that is? The average is about 120. She made full use of that. It is clear sign of using a disabled man who should not be prosecuted as if he was someone like you and I. Like, you know, it's not fair. So again, this will all come up later on. It is very important that if you're interested in this case, that you watch this entire video. There is so much truth in here. You see this? This means that if you have a score of IQ of 50 to 70, that means you are mental retarded, right? That's not a cuss word. It is just a sign of mental disability, right? He has an IQ of 77. That is only 7 points away from this classification. You see right here, diagnosing intellectual disability is the IQ of 70 to 75.
Cognitive disabilities. And in the end, folks, you're going to understand the dynamics of this case. That Nick wasn't able to formulate the necessary mental state to commit murder in the first degree. I expect you'll find Nick not guilty of murder in the first degree. And you will have the opportunity to consider lesser degrees of homicide. I ask that you keep an open mind, and I appreciate your attention this morning.
I couldn't agree more. It is very easy to manipulate someone with a mental disability. Remember I said that it is very difficult to do this with the wheelchair? We'll take a closer look. I will give my commentary later on.
This hallway, what do we find to our left?
The first room to the left
Yeah.
is a storage room,
Okay, and then the next door?
would be a bathroom.
And is there a door beyond that?
There is a door beyond that, which would be a bedroom identified as Gypsy Rose Blanchard's bedroom.
First of all, she tells the whole world that she has to sleep with her mother, but then she has a bedroom with a bed. So why does she need a bed if she sleeps with her mother? But then you will see that the very far end is Gypsy's room, and she says that she needed to use the wheelchair inside the house for everything. She could not walk because her mother was too strict and she was too afraid of her. So that means that she needs to do this whole thing every single day whenever she needs to go to the bathroom, right? Because it's also up in here. And when she needs to go to her room, she needs to do all of this with the wheelchair. But it doesn't really looks very practical. We also know that Dee Dee was ill at the time, so she could not drive her around the house everywhere. I think the Gypsy could walk inside the house. But of course Dee Dee is not here to verify this and to share the truth.
Okay, and if we go down this hallway, down to the far end,
belonging to Claudia Blanchard.
Claudine Blanchard.
Claudia, yes.
Now we will be listening to the tech specialist who has done the recovering of the text messages and Facebook messages, that sort of thing.
Accounts were you trying to get records for?
Initially, it was just for the one account that the postings had been on June 14th, but later in the investigation, I requested records for several accounts.
And were any of those accounts associated with Nicholas Godejohn?
Yes,
And were any associated with Gypsy Blanchard?
yes.
How did you know to search for those specific accounts?
It was through interviews in the investigation from other detectives. They'd received information that Godejohn and Gypsy had used different Facebook accounts to communicate with each other.
I don't know if I have included this, but it is known that Gypsy had many different Facebook accounts that she used to communicate, which all points to her previous activity with other men and her engaging in this type of perverted acting out. Maybe even BDSM role-playing. Because she has already admitted to this fact. She has already said that this is what was going on before she met Nicholas.
Of the accounts had been deleted prior to a preservation request being put into Facebook for those accounts. In that case, Facebook would not be able to provide the records.
These accounts were deleted, and because it was on Facebook, they could not retrieve any conversations. Very bad, because I was really interested to find out what were they talking about, or what was she talking about.
Of the records that you did get, were any associated with Nicholas Godejohn?
Yes,
And what was the name on the Facebook account that was associated with Nicholas Godejohn?
Nicholas Godejohn.
If you want to see
Did you
what they were
review-
talking about, it is a conversation between Nicholas and a friend and an ex-girlfriend. You can find that in my playlist, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's Rabbit Hole, and it will be the Facebook messages of Nicholas Godejohn. You can find that in my playlist, and while you're on it, please subscribe and leave a like to this video. So in summary, they could retrieve the videos stored on the mobile of Gypsy Rose and on the mobile of Nicholas Godejohn. These text messages are very well known, and of course also the Facebook communications. These are now public files. So now let's go into the evidence of the murder weapon. Was there some DNA found of Gypsy Rose on the knife? Was she involved in the stabbing? I would not be surprised.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 145. But is that the knife that you tested?
Yes, it is.
And then there seem to be several swabs in here with blue tape. What are those?
Those were the swabs that I took from various parts of it.
That is exactly what happened. This is the murder weapon. Guess who bought it? It was not Nicholas, because if it was up to him, he would not even do it in the first place, but he got manipulated. A disabled man with an IQ of 77, which is almost close to mental retardation. That is again not a cuss word, because it is just a DSM classification.
It may appear in the same or substantially same condition as when you packaged them.
Yes, they do.
Yes, it is in the same condition, because nobody touches it after the crime. This should not have been bought in the first place, so this question should not have been asked.
What was your general approach to testing the knife?
So a large part of our in-house...
Do you really want to know how he has done the testing, or do you just want to know if Gypsy has done any participating in murdering her mother, which she is not supposed to be doing? So, I'll just guess you don't want to know, and let's skip forward. So the question is, whose DNA is found on the blade of the knife? That is, of course, the sharpest end of the knife.
If any results came from testing the blade.
The blade did screen positive for the presence of blood, and that a DNA profile was developed from that, and that the profiles consist of being a mixture of two individuals. The major component of the mixture is consistent with the profile developed from Claudia Blanchard.
And the other
frequency
individual
of
was
1 in
Nicholas Godejohn. And now, let's go to the second question. Whose DNA is found on the handle of the knife?
The handle of the knife.
Yes, I did.
Did you just test one place or more than one?
In this case, I swabbed more than one.
And specifically, what areas of the handle did you test?
In this instance, I swabbed the red part of the handle there, and then I also swabbed where the red part of the handle met the black part of the handle.
Taking first the red part of the handle, what was the result of your testing on that part?
That also screened positive for the presence of blood. A DNA profile was developed and was consistent with being a mixture of two individuals. Nicholas Godejohn and Claudina Blanchard cannot be eliminated as contributors to the mixture.
And then how about where you swabbed, where the black part of the handle meets the red part of the handle? What were your results there?
From that one, a DNA profile was developed. It is characteristic of being a mixture of three individuals. Claudina Blanchard, Gypsy Blanchard, and Nicholas Godejohn cannot be eliminated as contributors to the mixture.
So yes, of course, Gypsy was the one who handed the knife to Nicholas, but she was smart enough to give him the glove, so there was not any DNA on the knife. So what happened? Did she not put gloves on herself? Did she just touch the knife with bare hands and gave it to him? Or was she the one who also participated in the stabbing? Please leave your comments. Now let's listen to him. He has investigated their text messages and their...
One is they would refer to different aspects of their personalities as different names. So Godejohn would be Victor or my evil side, and Gypsy had names like Candy, Bella, Demona, Ruby, and there may have been some others.
Something's up with Demona because she does not say that to anyone. She doesn't write it in her book. She does not talk about it in her interview that the other personality was Demona.
Secondly, they had what I've come to refer to as their signature salutation. So most of the time when they would stop talking to each other, closing out a conversation, they would say something to the effect of, I love, worship, and adore you. I may have that order wrong. And they would refer to each other as their twin flame soulmate. Most all of their communications when it ended had one or both of those.
They both worshipped and adored each other. And it is not that now Nicholas took advantage of her.
Describe the types of communications just in general that you found. There was messages from Skype between the two of them. There were...
Why are these messages not released to the public? Maybe because Godejohn can still appeal and it's still not released because it is related to his case. So in that case, all of this will come out in due time and we will see an even more clear picture of what the hell is going on here.
Stories, sexual stories that were saved on there that were likely exchanged, and there were numerous videos that they had recorded where they were talking to each other. You mentioned Skype. What is Skype? Skype is a communication program. So
let's skip this part. I think we all know what Skype is.
When you were looking at the browsing history and the fave icons, were you able to locate information about the defendant coming to Springfield, Missouri? Yes. Were you able to locate information where he browsed the sites looking at weapons or other articles that might be used in a murder? Yes.
It doesn't matter. She came up with the idea and then used a disabled man with autism to carry out the crime. So of course he chose sites to buy it. What the hell does it matter? She's still a criminal. In a minute we will see that they bought something from Walmart. Guess who's not in the security footage? It's Gypsy Rose Blanchard because she had a higher IQ than he did. So she will not be caught. Very smart criminal.
Knives on Walmart.com, but you see at the end category tactical knives. When you search on Walmart for knives, it gives you other options to narrow down your search.
Could have been a Facebook conversation going on.
I don't have any of the Facebook conversations on the evidence that I analyzed.
Okay, there could have been a Google conversation going on somewhere.
Yeah, anything that's normally done in the web browser normally does not save to the computer.
Okay, so there could have been several different conversations between Nick and Gypsy going on at the same time in different formats.
Correct.
So we're only getting a glimpse of what their conversation was over those handful of weeks.
These are the conversations that I was able
Very
to
smart
come up
answer.
with.
Very politically correct.
How many others that there are, I don't know.
So that's why we don't have much context of what they're talking about, correct?
The context is Godejohn manipulated Gypsy and Godejohn is a disabled man with autism. Very simple.
The context is what you saw.
Okay. And that's why it's a little bit confusing sometimes what they're talking about.
yeah, I will let you be the judge on that. Okay.
Now we will watch the psychologist who has diagnosed Nicholas Godejohn as having autism level 2 and having a mental disability, which of course the other psychologist agrees on, but he does not seem to agree with his autism, which is very funny because he has already been diagnosed when he was in his younger years. I will not play it right here, you can watch it in my playlist. It is a very, very broad video. Well, he will go into very much detail. We don't have time for it right now. That's basically the summary, that he diagnosed him with autism level 2 and having all kinds of difficulties with it. Makes him not like you and I. He needs guidance in his life, otherwise he will get into trouble. That's what autism is. Here we have one Skype message, and it says, Gypsy went on a mother's type of group on Facebook and talked about our story on what we planned on doing. You see, me and her are planning on having a baby next year as a way to stay together, so her mom has no choice but to let us be together. But you see, I saw comments on her post to that group that was bad-mouthing me, and she just took it like, whoa, okay, wait, and it had to do with finding someone better than me. She was already bad-mouthing him, or in whatever case being very bad. And next up is the other psychologist who has tested Nicholas and who has came to the conclusion that actually he does not suffer very much from autism because he's very perfectly fine. You see, it's very stupid because he has already been diagnosed when he was younger, but that's why he needed a special school. Complete bullshit, if you ask me.
With regard to autism spectrum disorder, is that a mental disease in the DSM?
Is it
Can you tell us a little bit about what autism spectrum disorder is in general?
a difficulty in social interaction that causes problems, difficulty interacting with other people normally in a social way, but also a tendency towards repetitive, focused type of behaviors that become problematic. And then there's some other subcategories that other things you have to rule out. But basically those two features.
Now Mr. Smarty Pants will talk about his IQ. Let's listen to this very good speech.
The full-scale IQ that he achieved when I tested him was 77.
Yes, so it was 77. If you have watched from the beginning, leave a comment. But 77, that's almost close to retardation. What do you think about that? How easy is it to manipulate someone with an IQ of 77? You tell me.
Where would that fall in terms of...
Yeah, 77 would fall right about here.
You see this bullshit right here, why people are mad? Here he is with his IQ. This is the IQ of a regular person. You see the yellow one? That is called mental retardation. It is not a cuss word, it is a DSM classification. Alright? I'm not cussing anyone, if that's what you think. But that's what it is. It's only 7 points away from that. And she manipulated this person. Is it now clear to you that this is exactly what happened?
And that would be considered borderline.
And what about the general ability index when you consider that in your test?
But listen, hold on to your seat because he's going to yap about some more bullshit right here. And the other lawyer of Nicholas Godejohn has seen through him exactly because he said he has a salary of 150 an hour, so he's gonna yap about nothing, or practically nothing, because he needs money more than he needs to spread the truth.
That was an 81. So my general ability index came out at 81, which is right here, which is in the below average, low average, below average, not quite borderline zone. There.
Did you diagnose him with an intellectual disability?
No.
And this is the reason why he is getting a punishment of first-degree murder, because he does not diagnose him as having a mental disability, because he has an IQ of 77, 7 points away. It's freaking crazy if you ask me. He has absolutely no consideration of his autism, because he thinks he doesn't have it. Because you just keep watching and leave a comment, so we can be in misery together.
Because his scores don't support intellectual disability. Even IQ of 77 does not support intellectual disability.
So Professor just diagnosed him with an IQ of 77, and he does not have any issues with that. It's perfectly fine. It's a normal person. Not prone to manipulation, not at all. It's very, just like you and me, basically. It was just the same as with Gypsy, because she didn't have the knife in her hand, and, didn't do anything. That's why she didn't have a punishment of life in prison. You know, it's bullshit.
What other kinds of testing did you do?
I did a broad array of neuropsychological testing, where I
I'm going to tell you this much. I have watched the entire thing, and it is very extremely boring, like not watch-worthy at all. But if you want to be fully aware of what he was talking about, I will tell you. He's describing all types of things, and because of his observation from the camera and from the interrogation, he came to the conclusion that his autism is level 1, and he does not suffer from anything. The doctors who have diagnosed him when he was about 5 years old are lying. That's not the case at all. You should go to a regular school. I'm very sorry, but they were lying to you back then. That's his final conclusion. You can go ahead and watch it. And if you have anything to add, please do. You can hear it. He's just yapping about nothing.
There's a then on the memory index, which measures learning and memory, the ability to...
He will talk about the index for learning and memory. Interesting stuff.
retain new information both visually and verbally. The overall index there was 91, which we can see when we read right here somewhere.
Very good, mister. What do you think about Gypsy saying that she has borderline? What's that all about? Have you done the IQ for Gypsy Rose Blanchard? I want to know that. Because her memory seems to be very bad. She is forgetting everything. She is making up a completely different story than what happened.
Did you find the defendant to be intellectually impaired?
I did not.
Why not?
All of his scores, even his historical IQ scores, some of them are low, yes. But even going back to his childhood scores, the record, none of them fell in the range of intellectual disability. The fact is, the objective data...
You see, that's his thing. He says one good thing and then he goes off into a completely different subject and stays on it for about 10 minutes. But what he said is that no, he does not find him intellectually impaired because his scores don't say it. But his IQ is 77. He has autism. He has been diagnosed in childhood. Apart from the fact that being very boring, he is talking very slow, so I had to speed it up a bit. But did you catch what he said? He said, no, he does not suffer from intellectual disability.
Did you reach a diagnosis with regard to the defendant?
Yes, I did.
What was it?
Autism spectrum disorder, mild, or level 1.
Well, if that is the case, that means that they can live alone and are pretty self-sufficient and can do things for themselves, but he clearly cannot because he goes to McDonald's to masturbate.
I should say. And also, because his reading level is not up to what I think it probably should be, and his math skills aren't quite what they ought to be, I diagnosed specific learning disability for reading and specific learning disability for math. This group out here that doesn't have impairment at some level and needs some support.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now he goes into a different tangent, giving us a lecture of what autism is. That's not what we're asking. Does he have it or not?
And
Education examples are in the middle, and then the restricted repetitive behavior.
Now let's go into the meat of the trial. What have you come up with, mister?
May have anticipated would be really a part of the trial, and it is. And she does have a story about her childhood and
He's now going to talk about her childhood, that sort of thing.
about how her relationship with her mom and how her mom abused her. But if we're not careful, there can be a tendency to let Gypsy's narrative overshadow what we're really here to decide.
Yes, Gypsy's narrative is that she is innocent and her mother abused her, but her mother is not here to defend herself. So who knows if she was abused? If she says, my mother hit me almost every night. And what if that was not the case? How are we ever going to find out? So what about that?
Because all along, flying under the radar, coolly, deliberately, was the defendant, Nicholas Godejohn.
I am so sorry, I had to laugh, but he said, all this time, under the radar of her wanting to kill her mother, it was Nicholas Godejohn who was the evil boogeyman who was after blood. Is that true, or was it Gypsy manipulating him into doing it?
And while you're considering the evidence, Gypsy is absolutely a part of the facts. But when it comes to your legal determination of the defendant's guilt,
Have you forgotten? Let's talk about deliberation again.
which you were given in instruction number 6, she's not. And because she has such a presence, because she has such a story, when you look at how simple murder in the first degree is, it appears as though something's missing.
Da-da-da-da. You see, that's what I'm talking about. That's all they have. It is deliberation. It's the fact that he can deliberate taking into consideration his IQ of 70s, close to retardation.
It feels like there should be more, and there could be, again, that tendency to want to take some of the drama, some of the other things that have made this case interesting back with you when you're deciding the defendant's guilt. But it doesn't go. If you look up at the instructions, there is nothing there that references whether or not Gypsy helped plan, or whether or not Gypsy asked the defendant to kill.
So if you want, you can just manipulate anyone into committing crime for you and you're innocent. Well, then Pablo Escobar should be innocent also, because he did not kill anyone, but he had hitmen to do it. So what's up with that shit?
It's not there. Not because we forgot it. It's not missing. It's because when it comes to the defendant's guilt, it doesn't matter. There may be a tendency to consider the victim, Claudine, and how she was, and the things she did, and how she abused Gypsy. But then again, look at
Did she abuse the Gypsy? Did she? We don't know. Didi is not here in the courtroom to defend herself, so we should not talk about her.
instruction number 6. Is there anything there that references her character? We didn't forget it. It's not missing. It's that when it comes to the defendant's guilt, it doesn't matter. All that matters is what the defendant did on June 10th, 2015. Gypsy did have a role. She was the one to ask the defendant to kill her mom.
There's a difference between asking and manipulating. When you ask someone, nothing is on the table for the other person. Nothing depends on your answer. You can say no and that's fine. But with manipulation, there is always the bargain. And the bargain was that they're going to be together. Because if he would not do it, they could not be together. So that's manipulation. It's not asking.
We have to be careful and separate out what is collaboration versus manipulation. Because
And he's agreeing exactly upon what I said, that it is manipulation and not asking. Because now he's making a difference between what is the difference between manipulation and collaboration. Well, why did you say about asking then? You could just said it was manipulation.
Be this sense that because Gypsy was the one that asked the defendant, somehow she manipulated the defendant into killing her mom. Let's think about that for a minute. Think about manipulation. It requires some kind of deception.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was too quick with my judgment. Let me retract what I said. It must be something that I misunderstand.
I want to steal a car. So I tell you, hey, see that car over there? The owner said I could have it. It's okay. Could you just go get it for me? That's manipulation.
Forget about it. I don't retract anything. Manipulation comes in so many forms. You cannot only say that, well, it is what I describe right now, and that's all, right? That's the summary of all kind of manipulation in one. That's not the case. When you say to someone, if you don't do it, then I won't be with you, that's manipulation. It's blackmail. That's why they call lawyers liars, because they lie for money. What is manipulation? Manipulation means pressuring others, sometimes in sneaky ways, to get what you want. That's exactly what she's doing. That's what she did to get her mom killed. She manipulated him. She pressured him. If he would not do it, she's going to go. That's the only way. There's time pressure. It needed to be done in a month.
Because we're deceiving. Versus, hey, that car over there, I want to steal it. Do you want to do it for me? That's not manipulation. She asked him, but he said yes. And if you think about it, in a way...
He's not pretending that that's all that happened. She asked him, and he said yes. Well, you have to take into consideration what is grooming all about. It is to sneak up into someone's mind and controlling them, letting them do exactly what you want. That's why kids listen to old men, perverts, right? That's grooming. Doesn't always have to be a child. It can also happen when you're an adult. It's also manipulation. That's what happened. She groomed him into committing the crime.
Gypsy asked in the least manipulative way because she didn't lie at all. She put it all out there.
Exactly. Narcissists and psychopaths are almost all the time very likable people and very good friends.
She didn't try to do it through innuendo. She didn't make up things. She just said, this is what's happening to me. Will you kill my mom? There's no manipulation there because ultimately it was the defendant's decision. Nothing was held back from him. And if anything was evident from the dynamic of their relationship that you saw in the Facebook, in the text messages, in the interview, and in Gypsy's testimony, Nicholas Godejohn was not made to ever do anything Nicholas Godejohn did not want to do. And what you saw from the beginning of that request was actually the defendant not only agreeing to this murder, but really getting into this murder. Remember that the defendant deliberated, because he did. There are psychological things we can look at, and those are important to consider. But at the end of the day, if you're wondering if somebody has the ability to do X, the best evidence is, did they do X? And in this case, that's what happened. No amount of mild autism, level 1, Asperger's.
Did you hear that? He just very sneakily changed the narrative into autism level 1, when it is level 2 and it is IQ of 70, close to retardation.
The fact that you heard him describe it in his own words instead. His response when he talks about how Gypsy changed her mind about killing her mom, yes, she said she wants to see how our original plan goes first, with me meeting her, and her mom, and such. I guess she wanted to only do it as a last...
Okay, next he might show the text message where he said, I don't want to do.
Taking that apart, in that moment, May 16, 2014, the defendant knows that killing Claudine is a plan, that it's in the works. He also knows he's the one doing it, because that was clear from the very beginning. He was going to be the one to physically do it. And he is demonstrating right here reflection, because he's recognizing, one, that murdering is the worst option. It's the heaviest option. It has the most risk. It's the most final. So he even recognizes that that is a last resort. Of all the planning Gypsy did, the defendant was given how. And it was his choice to stab. It was his choice to use a knife. We know that. We also know that he wanted tape. He wanted bondage tape. You saw that in the text messages, but more importantly, you heard Gypsy testify to that yesterday, that that was his idea, and that he wanted to do it to muffle Claudine. So again, going back to capacity to deliberate, he clearly recognizes that if you stab someone to death, that's going to cause noise. Causing noise means you could get caught. Using tape to muffle helps prevent you getting caught. No amount of Asperger's, autism, whether you're on the high side of the IQ or the low side.
We just make up stuff as we go. It doesn't matter if you're on the high end of the IQ or the low end. It does not matter at all. It is all the same thing. Well, is it? Leave a comment if you're frustrated.
That concept any better. You heard about his outfit. You see here where Gypsy asks, what will you be wearing on?
Nobody cares about his outfit. Gypsy manipulated him into doing something what he clearly does not want to do. Who cares about what he was wearing?
His part of the plan, his choice. He says something that will terrify her. It's all black, my evil sidekick, the full outfit. His mild autism changes nothing about any of the deliberation.
His mild autism changes nothing about what he's wearing. Judge.
That you just saw. And she handed him a knife. But without Nicholas Godejohn, nobody is holding that knife and stabbing Claudine to death. Just as he
And how do we know if Gypsy wasn't the one who was stabbing? Well, of course you don't have evidence, so you don't have a case. But you can make up all kind of stuff about Dee Dee abusing her, when Dee Dee's clearly not here to defend herself.
Imagine this crime without Gypsy. It's not happening without Nicholas Godejohn.
Nicholas Godejohn
He's done. Let's listen to the lawyers of Nicholas Godejohn.
is not guilty of first-degree murder simply because he didn't have the ability to deliberate.
He did not have the ability to deliberate because of his autism and low IQ. But then, of course, the other psychologist says that he does not have any disabilities and he only has mild autism. So basically the previous school is absolutely wrong, and the previous job, you know, the boss, why he did not want him to come back is also wrong, is also lying. You know, the security footage of Nicholas masturbating in McDonald's is also false and fraudulent, so of course he's perfectly fine.
Let's get one thing straight. Who wanted Claudine Blanchard dead? Who? Gypsy did. Gypsy wanted Claudine
And that
Blanchard
is exactly what it's all about.
dead. And but for that simple fact, we're not here. Are we? Was getting out of that home. That's all she ever thought about. What was Nicholas's focus during that entire time? Gypsy. Do you remember the interview with law enforcement about Gypsy? He talked about Gypsy. This whole thing comes back to Gypsy's determination to do whatever it took. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C.
And when you take a deeper look into the case, it all comes very clear to you that that is exactly what is going on. She needed to leave the house on all means necessary. It doesn't matter what the price is going to be. She needs to go. And because she does not have morals and she learned the way of deceit and lies, she thought this is the best way to do it.
To do whatever it took to get out of that home. She manipulated him into doing this. And again, why'd she kill her? Because in her mind, she had no choice. She wanted to have a normal life. She wanted to be a normal person. She actually tried one of them. And I can't remember which one was which, but I think it may have been Plan A. And if you remember what that was, She wanted to run away.
That's what Nicholas wanted also, and he tried to tell her, to convince her to please, let's run away. But no, the princess does not want to run away.
She is fully capable of deception because that's how she lived her life. She was trained that way by her own mother. She was trained to pretend to be sick, although much of that time she probably didn't realize that she wasn't sick. She was trained to pretend to be a child, and she got tired of that. Gypsy manipulated Nick, a low-functioning person with autism. And then Gypsy pressures Nick into committing a homicide against her mother. And that's the way that it's sort of a triangle, and they all sort of victimize each other in some ways. It's also unique in that you have this 23-year-old woman who has to pretend to be 16. And she acted the part well. She learned to manipulate. She was forced to live in a wheelchair by her mother. And she acted the part well.
And
again,
now
she was so desperate that
2024, she's going to continue to play the part of financial schemes and all that sort of thing. Being a public figure and not advocating for truth, which she said to everyone that she's going to do, but she did not do it up to this point.
felt like the only option for her to have a life was to kill. Her mother lived off charity. That's why Gypsy was in a wheelchair. And Gypsy learned that. Gypsy learned to steal just like her mother. She was stealing from her mother, among other places. That's all she knew. That's what she was taught. Her mother used manipulation to take advantage of people. So certainly so would she. And then when you're taking somebody in the situation that Nicholas Godejohn is in, with the cognitive deficits that he has, it's not real hard to manipulate him, is it? It's not real hard. She decided, we need to do this quicker because you're about out of money. That was her decision. She decided, we need to do this quicker because you're about out of money. Now, all of this has to be viewed in the context of the experts, Dr. Franks and Dr. Denny.
And it is because that expert said that he has mild autism and no mental disability. That's why he got sentenced for murder in the first degree and has life in prison without possibility of parole. When, on the other hand, Miss Gypsy is now free as a bird.
Dr. Franks gave you an honest, straightforward explanation of what he found. He found, after evaluating Nicholas Godejohn, that he suffered from, or he had autism spectrum disorder level 2, requiring support with accompanying impairment.
And that is exactly what the proof will show, that he still lives with his mother. He needs supervision, otherwise he goes to McDonald's to do that thing. And he has difficulty with school, he cannot hold a job. He is very prone to manipulation, that's the case.
And we know that Nick didn't have a lot of support at home. He pretty much lived on his own. Doctor, that situation might very well struggle to deliberate. That was his opinion. Dr. Denny mostly talked about Dr. Denny. He mostly talked about his CV and all the papers he wrote and all that stuff. All at $150 an hour.
Yeah, that was so funny, that's like a joke. The only thing he talks about is himself, and he gets paid $150 an hour. That's really good. But that's exactly what it is, because he keeps yapping about nothing.
If you're wondering why he talks so much, there's your answer. He didn't really tell us much about Nicholas Godejohn. He mostly only criticized Dr. Franks. What was his experience with persons with autism? He evaluated 4 to 5. Not a whole lot of real experience. Not a whole lot of real experience. He tried to downplay his own IQ scores for Nick, even though it was lower than Dr. Franks's. Had this chart, Bell chart, and had this extensive discussion of where the median is. Bottom line, his number was 77. Intellectual disability is 70. He also said their numbers have a little bit of play, And despite the fact that that was in single digits in terms of percentile, I want to say it was less than 10, meaning more than 90% of the population would have a higher IQ. He tried to somehow explain that, put it in the middle. Remember his little chart? And he also told you that most of the numbers were close to 100. I believe that was his testimony. Because he said the higher up you went, and that would be toward 100, the numbers kind of began to congregate. But he kind of explained it as if most people are all in this small range. People fit along that chart. And there's a reason that Nicholas Godejohn's IQ is 23 points lower than the average person. And that's significant. Even he had to admit that's borderline. He also talked about Dr. Franks' data being off, despite the number being bigger. But he never really told you how it was messed up. He figured, he fixed it. That's how he did that. And he said something that's really interesting. He said, the data is what the data is. That is 77. All evidence in this case demonstrates that Nicholas Godejohn has a low IQ.
Exactly, and that's what he says, that he has no capacity to deliberate with an IQ that low and having a mental disability and autism. It is very clear.
Undisputed by anybody. The simple fact of the matter is, Nicholas Godejohn did not have the ability for cool reflection.
You selected this for a particular purpose. He didn't just want to kill her. He wanted to terrify her. That takes thought and planning. The question is, did he deliver it? Did he coolly reflect? You have over years evidence of him doing just that. And again, it's cool reflection upon the matter for any length of time, no matter how brief.
Let me go on.
The jury has reached a verdict. Let's go into it. Of course, we already know what the outcome is. It's not looking very good for Nicholas, but it looks very good for Gypsy.
We're calling in the State of Missouri versus Nicholas Godejohn. The jury has announced that they have reached a verdict as to both counts. My remarks to the foreperson. Have you arrived at a unanimous verdict as to both counts in the case of the State of Missouri versus Nicholas Godejohn? Yes, sir. Would you pass down the file folders, please? The court has reviewed the verdicts and finds them to be in order. It will now announce the verdicts. As to count one, we, the jury, find the defendant, Nicholas Godejohn, guilty of murder in the first degree, as submitted in instruction number 6. We assess and declare the punishment for murder in the first degree at imprisonment for life without the possibility of probation or parole. As to count 2, and that's signed by the foreperson. As to count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant, Nicholas Godejohn, guilty of armed criminal action as submitted in instruction number 10. Signed by the foreperson. Ladies and gentlemen, because only the foreperson signs the verdict forms, I must poll the jury.
Tell me what you think. You have reached the end of this video.